Much, Vanessa. So everyone, welcome to Proposal Writing and Finding Grant Funding for CCP. I'm super grateful for being able to share all of the knowledge that I've gained with you through becoming a proposal writer and also working on a CCP, and also all the tips and tricks that I've learned from proposal writing. But also I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of knowledge in our group and in our community, and I'm hopefully looking forward to working with all of you to share your knowledge as well through group facilitation. So I'd like to be using the chat box. So throughout the session, we'll be dropping questions in the chat box, and please feel free to add your comments throughout the session and I'll try to stay on top of them. Vanessa is going to be sharing the screen for me and working through the slides, and yeah, and hopefully we can make this as interactive as possible. So moving on to slide 2, the next slide. So I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, and I'd also like to welcome you to also put your own land acknowledgement where you're zooming in from in the chat box. So I'm zooming into you from the traditional territory of the Haida Nation here in beautiful Haida, and particularly I'm in Skidegate where I live, work and play. So if you would like to put your own land acknowledgement in the chat box, please go ahead. Another thing I'd like to note too is that I do live in a very remote area, and the internet can be a little shady. So I might have to go back and forth between my phone and the internet if I happen. Today's been a really bad day for internet. Oh, hi, Erica and Michaela and Cliff. Oh, Malhat Nation, nice. Another island community. Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh. Hi, Christopher. So the next question I'd like to ask you is, looking at the agenda here, is what are you hoping to learn about in today's session? I know we have a relatively small group of 16 people, so I'd really like to make sure that we talk about the things that you would like to learn about. Hi, Ben. So what are you hoping to learn more about in this session? Okay, Cliff has asked where I can find multi-year funding for CCP implementation. Yeah, that might be a little bit more of a challenge, but I do want to mention that we do have a mentorship group, a nation-to-nation mentorship group, and we can definitely ask that question and see if other people might have ideas for multi-year funding. Hi, Linda from Burns Lake. Tips and tricks for successful proposal writing, something that stands out from the norm. Okay, you'll definitely find that here. First steps for applying for funding. Okay, great. We'll definitely be able to help you out with that as well. Okay, and then I have one more question for you before we get started. And just to gauge the room right now, I'd like to know who writes proposals, who in the group writes proposals. If you want to raise your hand too, go ahead and just raise your hand. Hi, Ben. Okay, I see Cliff writes proposals, Ben writes proposals. I know Vanessa writes proposals. Okay, So a few people, oh, Linda, you never have. Okay, great. Well, we're gonna get you started, and a little bit of disclosure up front here. There's a lot of information in this slide deck, so please take what you need and know that the entire slide deck will be available to you in Slack, and then you can take it and use it and absorb the information and use the tools that I'm also going to supply to you so that you have access to budgets and to work plans, etc., and other tools I have in here. So we're going to go through an overview of the proposal writing process. And I'm a big fan of one-pagers, so those will be very helpful for you. I'm going to show you some sample budgets, some sample templates for working on your proposal. I'm going to go through a whole list of tips and tricks and hopefully get some from you as well with those fellow proposal writers in the room. And then I'm going to go through some funding sources that are available, and then we'll have some time for some Q&A, hopefully. So if we want to move on to the next slide. So I'll just give you a little bit about myself, but I'm going to be very quick here because we have a lot to get through. But my name is Dana Moraes, and I am both off of the Haida Eagle clan of Kaidlanis of the Haida Nation, and I also belong to the Musqueam Indian band. Currently, I'm the Economic Development Officer or Executive Director for the Skidegate Band Council, and I look after our economic development here in Skidegate. I also worked on Edge of the Knife, which is a Haida language feature film that came from our comprehensive community plan. I've also been a proposal writer since I started working for Swan Bay Rediscovery, which is a cultural kids camp, and all of the funding came from proposal writing. And I'm also part of the ISK Nation or Indigenous mentorship program. So we do nation to nation mentoring at no cost to Indigenous communities, specifically working on CCP. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, we've asked who writes proposals. We know there's a handful of them in the room, so we can move on to the next slide. So before you get started, what skills do you think you need to have to be a proposal writer? And I'm putting that question in the chat box. What skills do you need to become a proposal writer? Well, most people would assume that you need to be able to write. So writing is a good one. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, so writing, budgeting, you need to know how to draft a budget together. You need to be able to do research. You need to know how to plan. You need to know how to put together a work plan. You also need to understand project management. Generally, sometimes the person writing the proposal isn't the person that's actually going to be doing the project. And the way that the proposal is written directly affects how the project can be ran. So it's really important to understand both. The next one, performance evaluation. So you need to know how you're going to evaluate your project and how you're going to be successful. And you need to be able to translate that to your funder. Like, if you give me your money, I'm going to ensure that this project is successful. And these are the deliverables I'm going to give you. And this is how we're going to know that this project is successful in our community. Okay, the next. And you need to be a storyteller. You want to be able to convey your story so that people can easily understand it and will want to support your story and support your project. Okay, next slide. So what is the process of proposal writing? How do you start? What are the sides to it? It can be very overwhelming. So I'm gonna break it down to you in a really easy to understand one pager with the next slide. So I want you to look beginning with the project. So I want you to look on the left-hand side. And if we look at the top, it's usually the first question that's in your project is your project description. I usually leave that to last to really tell the story so that I have a full understanding of my project, but you could put some brief notes in there. Describe your project. Keep it short and sweet and make it easy for people to understand. What are your objectives? What are the things that you're hoping to do in your community? Are you hoping to increase the number of employment? Are you hoping to increase the number of fluent speakers? Are you hoping to host a number of workshops? So what are your objectives? Number 2 or number 3 are your deliverables. So what are you going to deliver from the project? What are those outcomes going to be? So that could be a deliverable might be a final report. It might be sign-in sheets from the meetings that you held. It might be photographs of the project that was taking place. It could be a number of things like that, but you want to keep those relatively simple and not overcomplicate your project. What are the activities that are going to take place from start to finish? So A, I'm going to hire this person. B, we're going to purchase these materials. C, we're going to plan and research the workshop. D, we're going to host these many workshops, etc. And then finally, what are the outcomes going to be? What is the end result? Well, if it was to do with language, you might be hosting a number of language workshops or language classes. The outcome would be increased knowledge in that language. It might be the number of students taking the language. It might be the number of classes being held. And then you also want to look at who are your partners? Who are you also going to be working with? Everyone that would be involved in the project. And then you're also looking at your time frame. It's going to start at this time. It's going to end at this time. These are when things are going to take place within the work plan. And this is how much it's going to cost. And now if we look at the other side of the project, this is when you actually sit down and start writing your proposal. So you want to research funding opportunities. How can I leverage funds that will help support maybe getting other funds? I know quite often it'll be 50% equity. You have to provide some type of financial stake in the project. You just can't ask for the entire 100% most of the time. Some of this might be in-kind money where you're putting in already paid labor, or it might be a partnership where other people would put in their time or their resources. So you're going to research the other funding opportunities. You're going to research potential partners. Then you're going to reach out to funders and get more information about that grant. You can usually they'll usually have an online information package about the grant from start to finish of how you write it. And they'll also normally have a contact person where if you have further questions to see how your project suits that grant, those people can help you out. And most of the time, funders want to fund your project. They want you to be successful. They want to help you out. They don't want to have to take the money back. They don't want to not give out all the money because that means next year they won't get as much money. You also need to be able to craft a compelling story. Why is your story important? Why is your story or project, why does it stand out and why is it needed in your community? And then you're going to draft that story so that it's easy to understand, so that it's to the point, and so that it's compelling. And then you're going to submit it. And the good thing about writing these proposals is that once you start, you're building a library of proposals. And generally you can take information from one proposal that you've already started and build on the next one. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. So I've given you an overview of proposal writing, but now we're going to think about the project. We're going to think deeply about the problem. The next slide. So this is the most important part, is understanding the why, especially with CCP. People need to understand why CCP is important to your community, why the project is important in your community. And you always have to repeat what is CCP and why it's important. Otherwise, people won't participate. The same thing goes with writing a proposal. You need to deeply understand the problem and express why it's important for your community. Next slide. So this is understanding the root cause. How did we get to this issue? And what are the other contributing factors that are causing this issue in your community? And then why your solution is the solution for the problem. Next bullet. How do you make your reader understand the problem? And the next bullet. This is a really good exercise that I like to do as an elevator pitch. So as a practice, if you can stand up and within less than 2 minutes, sell your project to somebody in an elevator, then you have a really good understanding of your project and why it's important. So it's a neat exercise to do, especially if you're maybe in leadership and you're randomly meeting people who might have funding or another grant might be available. You can sell your project. Next slide. So this is another interesting exercise that I like to do. Is called the 5 whys, and I won't get into this too much, but please feel free to try this exercise with your problem. Basically, you're going to start off your question with, let's see, maybe I can use Haida language as an example because I've written proposals for the Haida language. So why do we need to learn Haida in our community? It's the question mark. Well, we need to learn Haida because we don't have very many fluent speakers. Well, why do we not have very many? So that's the second why. Why do we not have very many fluent speakers? Well, we don't have very many fluent speakers because of residential school and other colonial influences like influenza and smallpox that decimated our population. And if we go back to why did our people not learn Haida in residential school? Well, we can say the answer is that our people have had their language taken from them and developed a distrust in the educational system. Well, then as we dive deeper and deeper, we understand that, well, perhaps the solution might be is to build a class for the Haida language that is run by our people and will build trust within our people to want to learn the Haida language. So you can sort of see the way you can keep asking that question and get down to the root cause. And we'll just flip through all the 5 whys, Vanessa, if you can move on to the slide that says the beginning. Again, a really good exercise that you can practice on your own when you're working on a project. So in the beginning, we have our project overview, which has our project description. And I'm just going to get caught up on my notes here. So the project description often has a max number of words. And a way you can get around that is to, keep it short and sweet in your project description, but you can have a cover letter quite often and have more information about what the project is and who's involved. But again, you don't want to overwhelm your funder with too much information because they won't read through it. They get hundreds of applications and you need to keep it to the questions that they ask. Next slide is the objectives. Now, these objectives are probably the most important part of your project and understanding your objectives. So often these objectives are referred to as SMART objectives, which means they need to be specific. So we want to host Haida language classes. They need to be measurable, which means they can either be quantitative or qualitative. We want to host, we could say 10 language classes, 10 evening language classes. The other measurable one might be, we want to increase the level of Haida proficiency in our community. We want to increase the number of people learning the language in our community. It needs to be attainable. So something that is clearly identified, like something that you can definitely complete, and also realistic, so that you're not going to say we're not going to create an entire community of fluent speakers immediately, but we're going to create 10 learners. We're going to host 10 learners, and you want this to be time bound. So we're going to start our classes in September and we're going to end our classes in December. And the next thing is you need to make sure that these objectives that you're putting into your proposal align with your funders. So one of the things that I often do is I will go through the information on the proposal and I will highlight the objectives of that funder. And usually it's written in there. There'll be like two main priorities, and the grant funder might have specific objectives as well. And I will try to reuse those words in my proposal so that it aligns with my project. And next slide, please. The next one is your tangible results. So what will happen when your project is completed? What will you have to show for your project? These are your deliverables. These are things that you track and you will most often be asked to share with your funder. However, you do not want to make more work for yourself than needed. Doing our final reports and collecting the data and all of this other stuff can be more work than writing the proposal itself. And quite often, if people do not complete their final reports, they're not eligible for funding again. So it's very important that you keep your deliverables within the frame of your project, that you don't create more work for yourself, and that you keep it relatively simple. And you can also consider some of this information to be traditional knowledge that you don't want to share with your funder. You might give them a summary brief or a summary report. A lot of our cultural and traditional knowledge does not need to be shared to other funders or our maps, etc. So quite often, these deliverables need to be measured. They need to be an approved document. They often will be put into your funding contract. So you want to make sure that these things are definitely things that you can complete. What information do you already track? That's really important to know too, so that you can continue to put these same deliverables in every project. And yeah, I think that's just a really important thing. I've mentioned before, it could be a summary report, it could be photos, it could be sign-in sheets, it could be posters, advertising your events, it could be newspaper articles or stories that are being shared about the project. Okay, and then the next slide here is work plans. So these are the activities that are going to take place within your project. Generally, you will have a template that lists the activities. It will list when it's happening, what's involved with the activity, who's responsible, and maybe it might be how much it's going to cost. And it will generally have a timeline, a start and end time. So an example is we'll host community meetings to draft the vision and values statement meeting, and then we'll meet separately with elders and youth. So that might be the 10 community meetings, there might be 5 elders meetings, and maybe 2 youth meetings. 3 members of the organization will attend the annual workshop in 2021. So you might put in a travel plan for attending the national CCP conference or the provincial CCP conference, etc. Next slide. And I did put some of these work plans in the Slack, so you can use them, use the templates as you need. This is another example of a time frame work plan. So this might be in a calendar saying, well, we're going to start this project, and some of them might overlap with each other. So each of these deliverables or activities. Next slide. This is one that we use with a local funder here on Haida, but it's a very simple template that you can use. Your project name on top, your organization underneath, the time frame of your work plan, or maybe the name of the grant. And then you start with your activity. For here, my example is we're going to do some planning or pre-planning or research. That's going to happen from June 1st to June 5th. I'm going to do that. I'm going to formalize my documents, surveys, and fact sheets. That's my deliverable right here. And then I'm going to order some prizes, and that's going to happen the same time frame. And these are incentives that will be used for the meetings. I will then have catering quotes, which we have as part of our policy. And then we'll put out our quotes for dinners. We're going to launch our youth survey. So you can just see exactly how things are going to happen with this. And it's super simple. Again, this one is in the Slack drive. Next slide. Okay, now this is a logic model, and I'm not sure who's heard of this before. but it comes up quite often if you work in anything to do with mental health and wellness, and there's a lot of funding out there for that. So I also find that a logic model is really, really good. It's a one pager, and your whole project proposal can be on this one page. So this is going to really talk about what the community need is, what your what your activities are, what resources are required, and then what are your expected outcomes, whether they're long-term or short-term. So the next bullet, please. Your outcome might be increased participation in programs. It might be more youth involvement. It might be the number of language workshops running. Okay, next slide. So this is an example of a priority planner. This is just another tool that I use, but basically it helps me figure out how the project might align with the CCP. So if you look at the key priority, that might be your priority in your CCP, what your goal is, what the results are, current obstacles that might exist. So some of them might be, if I look at CCP as an example, it might be rides to meetings. It might be, food being served at dinner time. It might be childcare. It might be lack of staff to support. So you can put all these examples down here, then you can come up with strategies. It might be offer rides for elders. It might be offer childcare and activities for children. It might be offer food during dinner time so that people don't have to cook and will come to the meeting and participate. It might be offer gift cards to the local grocery store because food's expensive right now and people like winning prizes. So, it really gives you an example of how you can use this. Next slide. So this is the logic model that I was talking about. So basically you're looking at your current situation. Why is this project needed? What's important about it? And then inputs, what do you actually need to make this project happen? Do you need staff time? Do you need meeting space? Do you need prizes? Do you need food for caterers? Do you need researchers? Do you need a printer, etc.? So you can sort of see an idea. What are the activities going to be? We're going to host community meetings. We're going to host elders meetings. We're going to host youth workshops. We're going to create or draft a CCP. And again, like you wouldn't be doing all of that in the same year, but you would start working on it. What are your outputs going to be? Well, the outputs are going to be number of community meetings held, the number of participants in the meeting, the number of sign-in sheets, and it might be the number of posters created or advertisement. It might be summary reports from the meetings. What are your short-term and interim outcomes? So it might be increased community participation. So we used to have 20 people coming to the meeting. Now we have 50 people coming to the meeting. What's a long-term outcome? It might be creating community engagement buy-in for the CCP. It might be working towards a longer or more achievable project goal. And again, that template is in the Slack drive for you. This next slide here is just giving you an example of more inputs, more activities, more outputs, and more outcomes, not necessarily specific to CCP, but a really good one pager. And when you have this written down, it makes it really easy to write your proposal. Okay, the next slide. Now, this is one that's really important for me, is understanding who stakeholders are, because this is what can make your project look like there's more community engagement, there's more community participation, it's supported by other organizations, there's more resources being shared, there's more equity in your project. So can you brainstorm right now? I just put the question in the chat box. Who do you think your stakeholders are? Who are your stakeholders for CCP or your project? And just start brainstorming. Is there anyone out there? Are you still with me? Okay, Cliff, regional districts, neighboring communities. It's true, those could be stakeholders. Community members, chief and council, they're definitely stakeholders. Tribal councils, yes. Leaseholders, yeah. Anyone that it might affect? I know we had a few different things that we were looking at with our CCP. One of them was the difference between community members and band members. And we agreed that community members was the most important thing in our CCP, because some people had children that didn't have status, or some people had spouses that didn't have status. And there were lots of organizations and community members that worked within our community and supported our community. So we wanted to involve all of them. So yes, community, other environmental organizations. It might be the schools. You might be, advertising your posters and trying to get more youth involvement through your schools. It might be your local youth center. It might be your local health center. It might be your adult day program or a language program that you're working with. There are so many different organizations that could be your stakeholders. So you really want to do like a mind map and brainstorm who are your potential stakeholders and who your potential partners might be. Can I get another bullet? Vanessa, another bullet. So we got funders. Those are your stakeholders. If they're invested, if they have some sort of cash equity in the project. Neighboring communities, someone else had mentioned that, Cliff did. It might be academic. It could be post-secondary institution. It could be researchers. It could be the schools in your community. Mentors, for sure. Could be mentors. It could be elders in your community. Someone else had mentioned this also, the next bullet, municipal and regional districts. It could be NGOs or any other associations or organizations. It's definitely, continue with the bullets, it's definitely the local band councils or tribal councils. We have a matriarchs group in our community. That's what we look to as well as our chiefs council. It could be the nursery schools, or it could be Head Start programs or Strong Start programs where youth and families will be, and it could be local businesses as well. Okay, move on to the next slide. So this is one of the things that people usually have the most difficult time with, is working on the budget. And I like to keep this really simple as well, and break it down as easy as possible. But it's usually the last thing I do in my project. The last thing I do is confirm my budget. But with a lot of projects, you have to have confirmed cost quotes. So you may have to go out and find out, what is a catering cost going to be to host a meeting, and how many meetings am I going to have? How many people do I expect to have at my meetings? But if we look up at the top, and we'll start with revenues. So this is all the money you have coming in, all the potential funders you have for your project. So it could be your organization with your in-kind contribution. This might be the number of staffing hours that you contribute to the project. It could be your cash contribution if you have a little bit of money there. It could be an in-kind contribution if you have space that could be made available for that, etc. It might be other organizations that have resources. Maybe if they have sound equipment they're willing to lend you, or if they're willing to pick up and drop off elders, or if they might be willing to donate food to put towards your meals, etc. And then we go down to the next part where it says expenses. So this is, you're going to list every single cost. So you're going to list even the in-kind costs, because your revenues should match your expenses. So if you have your organization putting in staff time and it's in kind, you're going to match that down in expenses, your staff time, and you're going to break down in detail what it costs. It's going to be 100 hours times $50 an hour, which is a really good wage. So I don't know why it's that high in there, etc. And then you're going to put like travel expenses, material costs, catering costs, rental space costs, if you have printing costs or advertising costs, etc. And you're going to want to explain those in detail. Some funders will ask for a hard quote from whoever you're going to be doing this with, and sometimes they just need the detailed breakdown or a list of equipment you're purchasing, or online research where you've looked at costs as well. Next slide, please. This is another example of a local funder. Again, the same idea. It's broken down with the description of income at the top, and below that, the list of expenses. We have the dollar value, then we have the income type, whether it's a grant, another grant, whether it's cash, whether it's in kind, or maybe it's volunteer hours, whether that funding has been confirmed or just applied for, and then any kind of notes. Sometimes you might have one funder that will fund one thing, but not another. And that template is also in your Slack drive. Okay, and moving on to the next slide, please. So funding sources. So this is an ever-changing list of information for active funding sources. What I like to do is I keep a binder. And every time a funding source comes up, I will break it down per month. So I know generally maybe in January is when the P&ID funding is going to come up, or in December, that's when the First Peoples Pathways funding is going to come up. And that way you can track all of your grants and all of your funding sources in one binder, and you know roundabout when those are coming up. You can also join newsletter groups where they will list the current grants that are available to you. And it's really, really good to get on those funding lists. One of them is, I think, there's a health, I'm not sure what it's called. I'll have to look it up. It's like Northern Health, or one of those. They have a weekly or monthly email that goes out with all the current funding sources, whether it's for food security, whether it's for infrastructure upgrades, whether it's for farm to table at schools, etc. So the next page, this is a list of funding sources for CCP specifically that is on our comprehensivecommunity-planning.org website. So I did put the link there and put a list of them for you. This is also in the Slack drive for you. But more recently, some other funding has come available. Oh, I'll just list some of this quickly. So BC Capacity Initiative, that's a great grant, especially when you're starting your CCP. And they generally give priority to communities that have not yet done their CCP, or it's been a long time since they've done theirs. And they will fund you year after year, especially if you're in your different phases. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. There's also the First Nations Infrastructure Fund. A lot of that has to do with capacity and infrastructure. The P&ID, that's one that's available every single year as well. There's New Relationship Trust. They have I think a $25,000 grant that you can use for your CCP. The Real Estate Foundation, they're doing a presentation today. They generally fund green projects, but they've been involved a lot in CCP. First Peoples Culture Council, they have a lot of grants out right now. I'm working on one of them with climate adaptation and cultural heritage. And they've got some around oral history too. And a lot of these are really important grants for your community that will fit within your CCP. Usually what I like to do is look at smaller grants for quick start projects. So if there's an idea that comes up in your community, to like one for us was to put in outhouses, because we didn't have one at our kids park and we didn't have one at a local trail. And so it was identified, we wrote a grant, we got funding for it right away, and we put them up, and people were like, wow, this is really happening. You're listening to us and these projects are getting done. So you need to look at those smaller grants too, to get your smaller projects done within your CCP. So if we go on to the next slide, this is a new one that just came across my email as well. And there's a lot here and it's going to be hard to read, but I did put all of this in the Slack drive. So this one lists all the food security grants that are current available right now. And the next slide. The next slide looks at all the infrastructure grants that are out there right now. And the next slide. Economic development, tons of grants out there for economic development. And the next slide. Climate change and adaptation. So lots of funding out there for that as well. And all of this relates to community planning. Okay, and the next slide. Now we're moving on to proposal writing tips and tricks. This is a little bit more fun, where I can share some of my knowledge with you, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of your tips and tricks as well. We have approximately 15 minutes left as far as I know, and hopefully we'll have some time for some question and answers. So my first tip is read and reread the funding criteria. You want to make sure that your project fits within this criteria and you don't waste your time writing your proposal, your project for a grant that you don't qualify for or you're not eligible for. You want to highlight, like I said before, I'll go through their information and I'll highlight all the key words and criteria and things that I know I need to complete in order to finish the grant. So you look at their mandate and you want to use their keywords in their mandate, the keywords in their priorities, and ensure that your project fits their framework. And again, it's easy enough to pick up the phone and call the funder and tell them your idea for your project and see if it fits in their grant. And they may have ideas of another grant that's coming available or another one that might suit your project better. Okay, next slide. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone, which is what I just said. People want to fund your projects. They want your projects to be successful. They want to make sure that they allocate all of their funding out that's available, that they're giving away. A really good example too is to look at the past funded projects. What projects have they successfully funded in the past, and can you replicate or do a similar project? Is that project needed, or would it be funded in your community? Next slide. So tips and tricks. What makes your proposal unique and stand out from the other proposals? And again, this is when you look at your elevator pitch. How does my project seem really important, and how is it going to seem important to the funder? And why is it important to our community? So you really want to come up with a really good elevator pitch. Next slide. So if feasible, consider including things in addition to what's required. Do you have photos? Photos can tell an amazing story, especially if you've been working on this project or it's another phase of a project and you've already been successful in the project that you're working on. So do you have photos or a compelling video that's related? Sharing your community story, goals, visions. Having letters of support is really important too. And with letters of support, sometimes you can ask for letters of support from partners or key community organizations that don't necessarily have the name of the grant you're going after or a date. That way you can continue to reuse those letters of support for ongoing grants that you're trying to look for. Yeah, and other stories related to the project that you can include, whether they're newspaper articles or things that you have had published online. And you also don't want to overwhelm your funders with too much information. So a way of doing that is to send your information in attachments. And if they have time to look at it, then they have time. Sometimes they don't. Be clear and concise and specific when writing your proposal. Use examples to illustrate concepts, avoid using jargony language. You don't want to use acronyms, and you don't want to be, you want to keep things super simple. You're the expert on your project in your community, so the funder needs to be able to understand what you're proposing. They don't want, they're reading, like I said before, they're reading so much information and going through so many proposals. You want to keep yours simple and easy to understand. Next. Whenever possible, link to any other existing plan, vision, and goals. So if you have evidence to show support or evidence of research or anything like that, you want to make sure you include a link to that. I now use the CCP when I'm working on other projects, and I say, like for example, I just wrote a bursary for my son this morning, and I noted that his trades program is supported within our CCP because it supports kids in trades and returning home with their skills, helping to build more housing, which is needed in our community, more infrastructure, as well as creating more jobs because they're becoming self-employed. Okay, next slide. Be realistic about timelines and deliverables to avoid overpromising and under-delivering. So you want to make it seem like, yes, this is something that you're definitely going to be successful at. You can definitely get this done within a certain amount of time. And you want to be able to deliver it, because if you can't deliver your project, then you may not be eligible to get funding from them in the future. However, you can also contact them and say, hey, listen, this has come up and this has come up, and we either need an extension or our deliverable is going to change slightly because of this, because this is what happens. And generally they're very understanding as long as you communicate, the status of your project. Next slide. Budget specific. Make sure you know the maximum funding guidelines on specific line items. So one of those might be administration fees, especially within our band councils and other organizations. It's really hard to find funding to cover overhead costs like administration and wages. But if you can get administration fees within your project, you should always try to max it out. So if you can get 15% for administration, for photocopying, postage, advertising, staff time, bookkeeping, etc. Make sure you do that. Always add in the in-kind expenses to show that you have equity in this project, and it shows a higher dollar value, so that they're not necessarily the only ones funding this project. Be careful about including ongoing salary commitments versus project management fees. You want to be specific as to how much time your staff member is allocating to that project, and only using that as your cost within the project. Do research to get accurate costs. So you might want to do staff quotes, or you want to get cost quotes from contractors. You might want to go online and research current costs for materials. You might want to make sure that, and you want to look at shipping costs as well. We don't want to forget about those. Quite often we get caught with having to pay high shipping costs. Make sure expenditures and revenues balance. I mentioned that before. Everything that you have coming in from your grants, you need to make sure that you're actually spending all of that money, and that you're not holding on to the money, because people will ask for it back. And it always looks better when you can leverage other funds. Next slide. Oh, another thing to keep in mind too, quite often funders, if you have costs that are over $5,000, they're going to ask for a firm cost quote for that particular item, especially if they're considered capital expenditures. You will always want to make sure you break out your costs. Like, we're going to have 15 people or 20 people, and their lunch is going to cost $15. And this is our total amount for that luncheon type deal. Save, this is a really, 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 really important one. Save every proposal ever written in a separate folder. I have a hard drive that I use, and I store all of my proposals in there. That way, when something relevant comes up, you can copy and paste it and change it so that it fits into the proposal that you're currently writing. Also, I always hit the save button so many times when I'm working on things so that I don't lose it, especially with online grant applications. And quite often I will go ahead and I will write my blurb, and I will copy and paste it into a Word document. And I do that with every single one. You'll save yourself a ton of headache when that proposal, when the internet cuts out, or your proposal gets lost or doesn't get uploaded. So, or that blurb, like all those amazing things that you wrote are suddenly gone. So always make sure that you save it in a Word document and copy and paste it into your online document. The next one is have someone else edit your draft proposal. Fresh eyes are always useful. And I can tell you this too, working with Vanessa, is that I've done a presentation over and over again, and I never saw my mistakes until she pointed them out to me. So it's really important to have someone else take a quick look at your proposal, and they can find spelling mistakes, or they might be able to craft it in a way so that it comes across better when a second person is looking at it. So that's always great. Okay, if you hire a consultant to draft a proposal, make sure you have a pre-planning session, and see sessions in there twice, to avoid a cookie cutter proposal, because some consultants will write the same proposal over and over and over again. You want to make sure that this is your community story, your community's language, your community's priorities are accurately reflected. And also that I've done this many times when I've had someone else help me with something, and I change the wording because it does not sound like it's coming from our community, or that the priorities are our community's priorities. Okay, next slide. Ask for feedback from unsuccessful proposals. So quite often, if you don't get the grant, you'll get an email saying, thank you so much for your proposal. We have 5 minutes left, you guys, just got a message. Thank you for your application. However, we received so many applications and could only fund so many. Please, we encourage you to apply again. So that's great. But I would always pick up the phone and say, hey, can you give me some pointers on why we weren't funded, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll learn so much from doing that. And you also start to create relationships with your funders by doing that as well. Okay, quick, we have 5 minutes. What are your tips and tricks? Does anyone else have ideas for their tips and tricks or tips and tricks for proposal writing that you can share with the group?
Yeah, I just have one there, Dana. It
Yeah.
was when you had mentioned in kind, you touched on it briefly, but yeah, I think it's really important people know the language, right? When you say in kind, those can be those things that you've alluded to. You've spoken about volunteers, right? Added help that can have a dollar amount on that, as well as equipment or even space, like a building and that sort of thing. These are important things to consider when you're writing proposals for in-kind purposes. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Christopher. And it's great to hear your guys' voices now, please. So unmute too. If Ben, you want to go ahead? Oh, I don't see Ben anymore. Ben, did you have a tip or trick to share with the group?
No, it's a question I had earlier on, but you sort of answered it.
Oh, okay. What was the question?
It was in regard to when you're going over your funding proposals and stuff like that, how you're addressing them.
Okay. Yeah, I find it really important to keep all of the past proposals that have gone out, not just the grants that I haven't applied for, but when I see grants that come up, because then I know that they're out there and that generally they'll be posted again. And there's usually quite a bit of blurbs or wording in those that you can use in your proposal.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? We can just open it up to the group now. I know it can be very overwhelming. Proposal writing can be overwhelming, and there's a lot of information in here, but I hope that you will download the slide deck that I'll put in the Slack, and you feel free to use this and review it. With our mentorship initiative too, we often share past proposals that we've written so other people can look at them and see what was required for that proposal to be successful, and then they can craft it so that it fits their community.
One of the things that I do that I find helpful is if I know I still have a couple extra days before the deadline of a proposal and I already know that I've drafted it, sometimes I just leave it aside for a day or two, look at it a couple days later with fresh eyes, and then like I haven't seen it in a while. So it's kind of like you notice new things that you may not have picked up before.
Thanks, Vanessa. And I do remember you saying to me is always get your proposal in early. Don't wait till the last minute when you might be stressed or be dealing with technical issues and we're going to lose you in 50 seconds. But also submit your proposal and then call someone there and get them to review it. They're usually happy to review it, and then you can tweak it so that it fits better, or you'll be more likely to be successful. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Katie, our ASL interpreter, and to Vanessa for tech support. I know I speak very quickly trying to get all this information in, so I really appreciate your support. Hawa.
Hi.